Good evening and welcome to the twice monthly meeting of Westminster's Mayor and Common Council. During the public health emergency, we will be conducting our meetings virtually, and they will be available and streamed live on the city's Facebook page, as well as the Community Media Center channel and website. Even though tonight we are, for the first time in many months, here in person, we're sorry that we still have to exclude the public from being able to join us in the room. We'll begin, as we do every meeting, with the pledge to the flag, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Copies of tonight's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online on the city's website. First, we'll consider the approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the meeting of the Mayor and Council on March 22nd and special meetings on March 24th and March 30th. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve, Mr. President.
Been a motion by Mr. Kpis. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second by Ms. Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it and the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. We have several presentations tonight. We'll begin with a mayoral presentation on National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. A little different reading proclamations in person, but not to anyone. So bear with me. So today we have a proclamation for the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, which is April 11th through the 17th of 2021. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police or emergency medical services. And when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And the safety of our police officers is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Westminster Police Communications Center. And public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information and ensuring their safety. And public safety telecommunicators of the Westminster Police Department have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals and provision of police services. And each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Joe Dominic, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the Common Council, declare the week of April 11th through the 17th, 2021 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Westminster in honor of the men and women who whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Did say be it resolved. I'm not sure it should be proclaimed, but that's it, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to all of those who keep us safe through their work as telecommunicators. We'll move on now to the next item, which is the announcement of candidates for the offices of Mayor and Common Council member. And for that, we'll turn to our city clerk, who is also our elections administrator, Ms. Fiskowski.
Yes, so for the election of 2021, the candidates are as follows. We have, for mayor, we have Mona Becker and Dennis Dillon. For council, we have Morgan Barkley Mathers. Then we have Tony Cavacci and Dan Huff. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Fiskowski. The next item is our quarterly progress report from the Mid-Atlantic Gigabit Innovation Collaboratory, better known in the community as MAGIC. And for that, we welcome Mr. Graham Dodge, the MAGIC Executive Director. Mr. Dodge, it's great to have you with us again.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I believe I need sharing permissions, screen sharing permissions from Ms. Fiskowski. It says disabled.
You can go now.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Fine, we're doing fine.
Yes, everybody, thank you very much for having me tonight. Mayor and council, thank you. This is our third quarter progress report for the months of January, February, and March 2021. For those of you who aren't familiar with Magic, I'd just like to briefly recap what we do and our position here in the community. We have a lot of programs that are sort of educational workforce programs, workforce development programs that attract students, attract industry volunteers and mentors. We offer a lot of great entrepreneurship programming as well, like our 1 Million Cups program, which attracts entrepreneurs and startups and investors in funding. And this allows us to sort of output economic development, workforce development, startup acceleration, and angel investing syndication. We have a technology-driven economic development vision and plan for the city of Westminster. We call it Silicon Main Street. And basically, we want to see Main Street take full advantage of the gigabit fiber infrastructure, building on top of that with our autonomous corridor infrastructure that we're working on, and have that lead to a reversal of commuters who would otherwise be leaving Westminster Monday through Friday to go elsewhere. So we believe this will also retain Generation Z workforce and lead to economic prosperity for the community. We compare ourselves to Silicon Valley in many ways because back in the 50s and 60s, small train station towns like Mountain View and Palo Alto were very similar to Westminster's, how it is today, with these larger cities like San Francisco and San Jose kind of looming. And we had this high quality of life, low cost of living opportunity that attracts defense contractors, brings a workforce here, and allows us to really build upon that engine of the workforce development that's already occurring here in the city of Westminster. We have touched upon the autonomous corridor project. We've made some great strides in this last quarter for announcing not only the May 20th event that we've got coming up to do the kickoff of phase 1 and to be a showcase of autonomous vehicle technologies, but we've developed branding for the project. We have the vehicle wrap for the scanning vehicle that will be driving through Westminster to scan the streets. So we're making significant progress there. We also want to still work on developing and executing this vision of Silicon Main Street with the city. We want to develop a Silicon Main Street logo. We want to crystallize this vision into an executable plan that really encompasses everything, holistically from fiber all the way to the autonomous corridor. We also want to identify sources of data that we can use to track our key performance indicators as a city together so we can monitor and communicate through these quarterly updates, those KPIs. All right, so speaking of KPIs, these are the quarterly KPIs that Magic reports to City Council and Mayor every quarter. For Q3, we had 5 sponsors participating in our special events. We received $8,000 in sponsor revenue from those events. We received only a little bit of $328.61 from stakeholder revenue generated because most people do their annual giving at the end of Q2. We've submitted 4 grant applications, have received awards so far for none of them from this past quarter, at least. Some of them are still pending and may come through to fruition in Q4. We didn't receive, therefore, any additional grant funding in Q3. We had 8 volunteers from venture capitalists, startups, and tech companies engaged with our programs. We had 10 meetings with Westminster-based CEOs, 8 meetings with outside of Westminster CEOs and startups. We facilitated 2 jobs this last quarter. We had 0 jobs placed outside of the city of Westminster this quarter. We hosted or attended 12 different conferences or events, obviously online. And of those, we can attribute 9 where we were advertising and communicating the benefits of gigabit fiber here in Westminster. And then we were featured in 4 local and regional news publications. Here are some accomplishments from this past quarter to note. We completed the Magic Hackathon, our 5th annual hackathon. We had 17 startups that we brought into the 1 Million Cups community for our weekly Wednesday meetings. We launched a redesigned website, magicinc.org. We developed the branding for the Autonomous Corridor project, and we signed up 22 exhibitors and sponsors for the Autonomous Corridor event on May 20th. And that revenue was not captured in this past quarter. So you'll see that post to next quarter. What's ahead for next quarter? We're going to have our 10th Capture the Flag event, which is a big anniversary for that. We're actually Magic's also celebrating its 5th birthday as a 501c3 organization in April. I forgot to put that on the list. We are launching our cyber jobs program, which we've just been we say that we've been launching that each quarter, but with COVID, it's been hard to get businesses enrolled in that. So we're still waiting for the pandemic to kind of recede. We're launching our CTF for Teachers program. Same thing with that. It was originally supposed to happen last year, but it looks like it's going to happen this June. 3rd semester of our game development classes will be underway starting in May. We're going to have 3 different classes, 3 different difficulty levels. We're going to, of course, have more of the 1 Million Cups meetings, including a great meeting this Wednesday with the author of a best-selling book called Primitive, named Marco Greenberg, who's a special guest through the efforts of Hey Westminster, collaborating with us on that event. And we have the Autonomous Corridor ribbon cutting ceremony. Again, that's May 20th, 2 to 6 p.m. We're working with city staff and police to make sure that event goes off well without a hitch. And we'll be announcing our Spire Girls Female Leadership Program this summer. So we're really excited about that as well. And that is the end of my quarterly update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dodge. Are there any questions for Mr. Dodge? All right, well, thank you very much once again. I think, I know I speak for most of us, if not all of us, when I say we're pretty excited about the autonomous vehicle project. Looking forward to hearing more about that, and look forward to you keeping us posted on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now it's time for the presentation on the 2022 budget proposal. And for that, we turn to our city administrator, Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. It's my pleasure this evening to present the proposed budget for FY 2022. The budget represents the Mayor and Common Council's vision for service delivery in the next fiscal year. And in that regard, I consider it to be the most important action that the legislative body takes each year. Countless hours of work went into getting us to this point this evening, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the city's management team, as well as the members of the Finance Committee for all their guidance and direction during this process. Before I kind of delve into the details, I just wanted to spend a few moments talking about some of the things that actually sort of drove the preparation of the budget. In our discussion with the Finance Committee, they directed that there be no change in the real property tax rates for FY 2022. We will see increased revenues due to higher property assessments in the next fiscal year, and that will impact both the general fund and the capital projects fund. As some of you may recall who are more tenured, we undertook a rate study in FY 2018. A new rate structure was adopted for both water and sewer, and a 5-year rate plan was adopted in conjunction with the fiscal 2019 budget. So the rates for FY 2022 were set as part of that multi-year rate structure adoption. For FY 2022, we'll see a 3.5% increase in water rates and a 5% increase in sewer rates. Another factor that influenced the development of the FY 2022 budget was that fiber fund revenues will be insufficient to cover debt service, and that will necessitate a transfer from the general fund of approximately $95,000. And lastly, as far as budget drivers, we are still obviously coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly, I think the economy is stronger than what many of us feared it would be a year ago. Having said that, I think there will still be some impact on certain revenue sources in FY 2022, the most prominent of which is income tax receipts. City staff has been advised by both state and county officials that they are noting payment anomalies in income tax receipts due to the pandemic's impact, and that we should be cautious about relying on FY 2021 data in terms of projecting for FY 2022. Staff has included in the budget proposal a slight budgetary increase in income tax receipts compared to FY 2021. We undertook a kind of a analysis, a look at our city's pay structure. We retained Evergreen Solutions, which was the firm that did the study a little over 3 years ago. Their recommendations were presented to the Finance Committee on March 26. Evergreen is recommending a 3% shift in the city's pay structure. What that means is that minimum, midpoint, and maximum of every pay range would be adjusted by 3%. Evergreen has also recommended the reclassification of certain positions in both the police department and in public works. This is basically due to the fact that they saw significant market shifts, in particular in those positions. As part of their scope of work, Evergreen developed 3 alternative scenarios for employee wage adjustments for FY 2022. I know this is very familiar to the mayor and common council, but just for anyone in the community who may be watching who isn't familiar with the city's budget structure, our budget basically is encompassed by 5 separate funds. The general fund includes the operational activities of the city, such as planning, police protection, snow removal, and general administration, such as the activities of our finance department and my office. Also kind of rolled up into the general fund are the activities of the city's public housing authority. The water fund, the sewer fund, and fiber fund are known as enterprise funds. I think it's pretty obvious what those funds entail by their name. By policy, these funds are intended to be self-supporting. And lastly, the capital projects fund is where we capture all financial activity related to our non-utility capital expenditures. Activities included in this fund include such traditional capital projects such as our annual road paving project and city facility upgrades, including things such as roof replacements. Wanted to spend a few minutes sort of touching on how the FY 2022 budget proposal will advance the goals of your strategic plan. Our strategic plan was adopted in February 2018, and it was updated in both calendar year 2019 and 2020. There are 5 critical success factors which exemplify the elected body's long-term vision for the community. As I get ready to walk through specific aspects of the FY 22 budget that touch on the strategic plan, I would be remiss if I didn't note that not all of our strategic plan objectives are tied to a specific budgetary allocation. In some cases, it's really a matter of how staff allocates their time and resources on certain projects. That's particularly true in terms of our strategic plan initiative to build strong partnerships in the community. So with that said, under the umbrella of the water and sewer capacity for future generations, funding is included in the FY 2022 budget proposal for the inflow and infiltration mitigation project. As the mayor and common council are well aware, this has been one of your priorities to reduce inflow and infiltration into the city sewer system. When literally those holes are plugged, we basically add sewer capacity, which is very important for our continued growth and prosperity. Also, under this particular critical success factor is funding is included in the budget for continued work on the city's water reuse pilot project. Under the critical success factor of economic activity and growth, we have included funding in the Department of Community Planning and Development's operating budget to resume work, hopefully in FY 2022, related to the redevelopment of the former Stocksdale property. As you may recall, we hired a firm, Partners for Economic Solutions. They undertook their work. And then at their recommendation, we sort of hit the pause button because with the pandemic, the economy was sort of thrown into a tailspin. So we are hopeful that Partners for Economic Solutions can resume their work in FY 2022, and the city will be able to move forward with your vision for redeveloping that very critical corner in our downtown. Also in Mr. Depot's budget is funding for consulting services to assist he and his staff with updating our zoning code and sign code during the next fiscal year. A number of items fall under the responsible stewardship of city resources critical success factor. This is a fairly broad critical success factor that touches on a number of things, certainly investment in our physical infrastructure, but also investment in our staff. The language surrounding this critical success factor also touches on your desire to be a more sustainable community and also to leverage technology. Related to our workforce, particularly the attraction and retention of a quality city staff. As I already mentioned, we did retain Evergreen Solutions at the end of 2020 to make sure that our salary structure and wage structure basically supports the quality and retention of city staff. As Mayor and Common Council are aware, we will begin the process of implementing a police body worn camera program in FY 2022. And would like to take this opportunity to compliment the chief for his foresight. As everyone is probably aware, on Saturday, the legislature overrode the governor's veto. And basically, police body worn camera systems will be mandatory in Maryland in the coming years. Included in the budget is also funding for the purchase of an additional license plate reader to supplement that already in use in the police department. In the street department budget, we have funding to upgrade certain city facilities to LED lighting standards. This has a very quick payoff and should be a very good investment for the city. Also throughout the CIP, you'll see a variety of projects that exemplify our appropriate investment in city infrastructure, whether that is roads, our fleet, or our parks, a variety of things. One of the projects included in the FY 2022 budget is beginning the process of implementing the master plan that is being developed for Wakefield Valley Park. I believe our consultant, Pannoni and Associates, will be making a presentation to the Mayor and Common Council at your meeting in May. We also have funding for sealing of the Durbin House building envelope. As you all are aware, the Durbin House is one of the most important historic structures in the city. We are assuming in the budget that 50% of the cost of this project is funded by a grant that we have not yet received, but we are hopeful. Wanted to talk about property assessments. Real property is reassessed in Maryland on a triennial basis. For any residential property increases that result from reassessment, there is a 3-year phase-in. Any decrease is phased in immediately. All Westminster property was reassessed in calendar year 2020, and FY 22 will mark the first year of that 3-year assessment phase-in. The city's net assessable base increase is approximately $50.66 million, or a 2.67% increase from that of a year ago. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the real property tax rate of 56 cents per $100 of assessed valuation will remain unchanged in FY 2022, but once again, we will see increased revenues due to higher assessments. Of that 56-cent property tax rate, 44 cents goes to the general fund, which should see an increase of about $333,000. The remaining 12 cents is earmarked by policy to go to the capital projects fund, and that fund will see an increase of roughly $91,000. The constant yield tax rate, which is a calculation performed by the state, is set at FY 2022 for 0.5454. So we will be exceeding the constant yield tax rate. Wanted to just go through very briefly staffing changes that occurred since you adopted the FY 2021 budget that will impact the FY 2022 budget. As you likely recall, mid-year in FY 2021, the Mayor and Common Council approved the hiring of a second deputy chief in the police department. That position was not funded in FY 2021, but obviously will be funded for FY 2022. Our longtime police custodian retired at the end of calendar year 2020. The chief elected to move to the use of a contractual service, so that position was eliminated in the FY 2022 budget. We recently, I think it was April 1st was the cutover date, transferred overnight dispatching services to the county. And that is allowing us to eliminate one communication specialist, one position for the next fiscal year. And lastly, the FY 2022 budget reflects the elimination of the Family Fitness Center manager position. You all had extensive discussion last year about putting in a plan to eliminate the longstanding fitness center operational deficit. The phase out of this position was part of the plan that Ms. Gruber presented to you all last year. Other personnel cost information that may be of interest to the Mayor and Common Council. We got a great renewal rate on our employee health insurance. Our cost will only go up by 1.5%. Our non-sworn police staff participate in the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System. We'll see a slight increase in our required employer contribution rate going from 10.24% to 10.57%. Our sworn police staff participates in the law enforcement officers pension system, and we will actually see a slight decrease going from 34.93 to 34.21%. And lastly, we are seeing continued increases in the Maryland minimum wage. We are one of the states across the country that is geared up to eventually go to a $15 minimum wage in Maryland. Increases take effect on January 1st. It is being phased in. With each year, I believe it's leading to 2025, the minimum wage is going up by 75 cents as of January 1st each year until we hit that $15 rate. A pending decision that will affect personnel cost, as I mentioned earlier, Evergreen has recommended a 3% pay structure shift. They have also recommended position reclassifications. Decisions on those matters is still pending. Also pending are decisions on employee wage adjustments, what exactly that will look like for next year. And we did receive new position requests for staffing from both Mr. Davidson for the technology department and Mr. Strasberg, our street superintendent. So those issues will need to be worked out during the course of your budget process. Just a few other things about the general fund that may be of interest. In the Legislative and Administrative Services Department's operating budget, there is funding for a team building strategic planning retreat. You will have some new faces on the Mayor and Common Council after the election in May. Also, you will have a new city administrator within the next couple months. And additionally, your strategic plan timeframe basically expires at the end of 2021. So it's a good time for you all to regroup in the fall, spend some time together, and also kind of refresh your strategic plan and develop a new vision for the next couple years. We have also included funding in the draft budget for a repeat of the 2019 resident survey. When those results were presented to you about 2.5 years ago, you instructed that you wanted to do a survey every 2 to 3 years. So this would accomplish that direction. Thought it might be helpful for you all to know that the fitness center is budgeted in FY 2022 to be operationally positive, roughly $44,000. I would note that this figure only deals with operational cost. It does exclude all capital costs associated with the operation of the fitness center. Our pool is budgeted at a deficit for FY 2022 at $16,500. And our summer camp is also budgeted at a deficit of roughly $16,000. We have put in new pricing structures. We're not sure how the community is going to respond to that. And we are also obviously still dealing with either mandated state restrictions in terms of summer camp or just potentially folks' concerns about being in a pool. Included in the budget is the customary outside agency funding that we have provided to the Westminster Volunteer Fire Department and the Westminster Municipal Band for many, many years. No change in those funding levels is proposed. New to our kind of outside agency funding, we did receive a request from the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. They have been involved in the grant that we received for the Durbin House. They reached out to the city to request a contribution for FY 2022, and after discussion, the Finance Committee did recommend that we honor that request for FY 2022 at their direction as well. I have emphasized to the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area that there should not necessarily be an expectation that this funding would continue in future years. We have for the last 4 years, given funding to Magic, as you know. At the end of this fiscal year, we would have given grant funding totaling $320,000 to Magic. Prior to that, the grant process beginning in FY 2018, we provided some direct support by paying for the cost of their executive director. There is a placeholder amount included in the general fund of $80,000 at the direction of the Finance Committee. This would be a new cost to the general fund. As I mentioned, the fiber fund is in a deficit position. It will require a transfer from the general fund to be brought into balance, given that it didn't make any sense to basically just up the transfer. It made more sense just to include any grant funding that you elect to include in the budget in the general fund, because that's practically speaking where the funding is coming from anyway. Switching to the water fund, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a 3.5% rate increase in FY 2022. I did want to call out that when you look at the budget and you look at total revenues, those revenues include benefit assessment fees of approximately $541,000. The use of those benefit assessment fees is restricted by law, and we only have one project in FY 2022 that qualifies for the use of benefit assessment fees, and that is the water reuse pilot. So when you look at kind of a comparison of revenues to expenditures, please keep in mind that those benefit assessment fees are restricted. So not all of the funding that will be coming in FY 2022 is actually available for use. The budget does contemplate a reserve allocation of approximately $294,000, and this is a reappropriation of FY 2021 capital funding for projects that will not be complete during this fiscal year. Some projects just to highlight for you, and there's certainly more than this in the capital improvement program, but as I mentioned, we'll continue work on our water reuse initiative next year. We have roughly $460,000 in continued funding for the pilot project. A portion of this cost, a significant portion of this cost, about $347,000, will actually be available from a federal grant through the United States Bureau of Reclamation. The balance of the cost for this project will be paid for out of benefit assessment monies. We have a placeholder amount of $250,000 for elimination of what are known as PFAS chemicals at well 8, as the Mayor and Common Council are aware. Sampling by the Maryland Department of the Environment detected the presence of certain PFAS chemicals at well 8. At their direction, we have taken well 8 out of service until such time as we develop a mitigation strategy. The mitigation strategy is still in the engineering phase, so we don't know exactly what that will cost. So at Mr. Glass's recommendation, Ms. Colston and I included a placeholder number of $250,000. So it could be more, it could be less than that. We also have continued work on the Route 27 water main replacement of $275,000. That project is anticipated to be in design this fiscal year and actual construction starting next year. And debt service next year should total about $962,000 in the water fund. Switching to the sewer fund, once again, there'll be a 5% rate increase. Other revenue sources include a state bay restoration grant for the ENR biosolids project. There is also loan funding for that project, and we will be receiving reimbursement from the county for their portion of the project, which is the septic facility upgrade, which they own. Similar to the discussion we just had about the water fund, we will be bringing in roughly $444,000 in benefit assessment fees coming for the sewer fund. Its use is also restricted, and there are no qualifying projects that those funds can be applied to in FY 2022. As I mentioned, work will continue on the ENR biosolids upgrade project. That is by far the largest sewer fund expenditure of just under $24 million. The county septic facility is about $1.7 million of that amount. We'll be spending $1 million on inflow and infiltration work in FY 2022. That'll be a series of small lining projects throughout the city. We are still only paying interest on the state loan for the ENR biosolids upgrade project. So debt service will be interest only at $400,000. And our wastewater superintendent, Mr. Rawlings, would like to buy a new influence screen. I think he's gotten as much life out of the existing one as he can. Switching to the fiber fund, we are estimating some continued growth in the Ting subscribers. Specifically, we are assuming an increase of 28 subscribers per month. That would generate payments from Ting to the city of approximately $825,000. The fiber fund budget contemplates a drawdown from the state loan that we got. This is a 0% 30-year balloon payment at the end of 30-year loan. We will be drawing down about $517,000 from that loan. And if that number holds, basically all $1.3 million from the state loan will be fully utilized by June 30th, 2022. Debt service in the fiber fund is going to be about $925,000. And I do just want to kind of draw up kind of the juxtaposition of the payments that we are getting from Ting of about $825,000 just relative to debt service alone. It's not covering that. As you all aware, there are other costs associated in the fiber fund, but specifically the Ting revenue will be insufficient to cover debt service, and a general fund transfer will be needed to balance the fund. As I mentioned, that general fund transfer currently stands at about $95,000. Any shift in the pay structure, any wage adjustments that we grant in FY 2022 will increase the amount of that transfer that is needed to bring the fund into balance. One of the items that staff discussed with members of the Finance Committee was the current staffing allocation is not representative of the true cost of the fiber fund. For example, no portion of Mr. Glass's salary and benefit cost is charged to the fiber fund. The same holds true for Ms. Colston, as well as the utility maintenance superintendent. The Finance Committee has recommended that the Mayor and Common Council review the current staffing allocation for the fiber fund in FY 2022, and prior to your FY 2023 budget, make a determination as to whether any change in that allocation is warranted. Kind of looking ahead to FY 2023 and beyond in the fiber fund, as I mentioned, we anticipate that we will exhaust the $1.3 million in state loan proceeds by the end of fiscal year 2022. If we already have an operating transfer of roughly $100,000 and we're using $500,000 of state loan proceeds, what that means is beginning in FY 2023, in the absence of any type of new funding source, the city will be looking at a funding gap in excess of $600,000. Once again, in the absence of any new source of revenue, that will be the operating transfer amount that you are looking at from the general fund, and in the longer term, that will be financially unsustainable. So there has been some discussion of implementing a community broadband fee, and that would certainly be something I would recommend you charge my successor with addressing with staff as a high priority when he or she comes on board. Switching to the Capital Projects Fund, this fund has a number of funding sources, certainly the dedicated property tax revenues that I mentioned earlier. We get funding from highway user revenues, which can be specifically used for road improvements. We will see special benefit assessment fees in this fund as well. We will be undertaking the renovation of our pool, so we will be drawing down the bond proceeds to make those pool improvements. We have a awarded but unused program open space grant, and I believe it's our turn in the cycle in FY 2022, so hopefully Ms. Gruber will be successful in getting some additional program open space funds in FY 2022. One of the discussions we had with the Finance Committee, because the departmental request, as usual, exceeded our available funding. As you recall, we sold the former West End School property during this fiscal year, and basically we yielded $430,000. The Finance Committee has endorsed transferring that $430,000 from the general fund into the Capital Projects Fund for use for those very needed capital projects. So that meant that we did not have to basically really dig into and cut the request from the departments. There will also be an allocation from the fund reserve. This also is representative, similar to the water fund, of FY 2021 capital projects that were not complete by the end of this year. Similar to what I've already said, benefit assessment fee use is highly restricted. There is one qualifying project in the Capital Projects Fund for FY 2022, and that is the purchase of a new leaf vacuum. We are seeing continued residential growth, and Mr. Strasberg could benefit from having an additional leaf vacuum to basically service those growing areas in the city. I mentioned we'll be doing some community pool improvements. I believe Ms. Gruber's intention is to get the request for bids out on the street so that construction can almost start immediately after the pool is closed. After Labor Day weekend, we'll be undertaking our annual road paving project, purchasing vehicles for both the police department and the street department. There is funding included in the Capital Projects Fund budget to begin the process of implementing the Wakefield master plan that is being developed. And there is also debt service included in the Capital Projects Fund. So to kind of wrap up, wanted to just kind of walk through the schedule with you all. Later in your meeting agenda, you will be considering introduction of the ordinance adopting the FY 2022 budget. This is not the adoption, simply the introduction of that budget ordinance to get it into play. On April 19th, you will be holding a special meeting. That meeting will include a public hearing so that the community can offer input on the proposed budget. It is also the first of 2 budget work sessions that the Mayor and Common Council will be holding. On April 26th, you'll have the second public hearing. You will also be holding a public hearing that is required by state law, referred to as the constant yield tax rate hearing. As I mentioned, we are planning to hold our tax rate at 56 cents. The constant yield tax rate is 0.5454. Anytime in Maryland that a tax rate will exceed the constant yield tax rate, you are required to hold a hearing. And that will also, April 26th will also mark the last of your scheduled budget work sessions. I did want to note that these are your budget work sessions, and the topics that are discussed will be determined by the Mayor and Common Council. Unless staff receives direction as to specific topics that you would like us to present on, the work sessions will basically be structured as an opportunity for the Mayor and Common Council to discuss whatever aspects of the budget you'd like to discuss amongst yourselves. And obviously all the department directors will be participating in the budget work sessions, and they will be available to answer any questions that you might have. So we await your direction as to whether or not there are any specific topics that you want to cover specifically at the April 19th work session, so that we have an adequate opportunity to prepare materials for any presentation you would like. And lastly, the current schedule calls for the budget to be adopted on May 10th. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And I want to thank you for your time and staff and I look forward to working with all of you to finalize a budget for FY 2022 that advances the goals of your strategic plan and also serves the Westminster community.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews, and for that presentation, and thanks to you and Ms. Colston and the rest of the staff, including the department heads who did so much good work to help put together this budget. We appreciate everyone's hard work on this, and especially the thoughtful approach to budgeting that we've traditionally taken here in the last few years. I'd like to suggest 2 things. First of all, I think that presentation was very helpful, and if you could distribute that to the mayor and council by email, I think it'd be a useful tool for people to try and help think about the topics we want to discuss at the work sessions. Secondly, I'd like to ask my colleagues in the next day or so if you could identify those issues and get back to me with your suggestions. Then we could put together a list and be able to share that with the staff, so that Ms. Matthews and the staff will be prepared to provide any information we may need and to be able to help us as we walk through those issues. So with that, if you all could help us with that, we'll be prepared to move forward for the meeting on the 19th. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything to add to this?
No, not to that. That's exactly what I would have said.
Okay,
I
great.
approve your comments.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That ends our presentations for this evening, and we will now move on to our report from the mayor.
Mr. President.
Oh, yes, Mr. Kpis.
The work session on the 26th,
Yes, sir.
do we have a schedule for that yet? Do we have time set? I know the 19th is our normal meeting
Right.
time.
Right?
26th, we have a council meeting, correct?
Yes,
So I'm assuming we're gonna
It'll be
schedule,
part of that council meeting.
we're gonna make it part of the meeting,
Yes, sir.
not a separate meeting.
No, that's right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So now, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep it short. I think, it's clear to see what we've been working on lately. Mr. Davidson, I have my laptop muted. That's the way it's supposed to be, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just double checking before I said everything. The only thing I'd like to say is that we have an election coming up here at the beginning of May, and I'd like to see a big turnout. I think it would be nice for us to have a big turnout. Sometimes there are big turnouts because they're big issues that people are happy to support or upset about. But I think there should just be a big turnout anyway. I don't think there are a lot of those issues right now, but I think I'd like to see a lot of people come out and support their their favorite elected officials or I guess possible elected officials. And that's really all I have to say, Mr. President. Just I'd like to see a big turnout for the election.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we always want to encourage everybody to vote. We'll now move on to reports from standing committees. From the Arts Council Liaison, Mr. Dayhoff.
No report this evening. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dayhoff. For the Economic and Community Development Committee, Mr. Yingling.
Yeah, one thing, we have scheduled, and I'm looking at the calendar right now. We are having an economic community development meeting at 9 a.m. on April 23rd. I believe the agenda I don't have the agenda yet, but I know two topics that will be discussed is Partners for Economic Solutions, who are our consultants on the Stocksdale redevelopment, will be presenting some of their research and some feasibility, of the idea of developing that property into some sort of boutique hotel. I know they were looking into that per the committee's direction. So very excited to discuss that. And the Be Kind initiative is I believe, on the agenda. We had some discussion about that a few months ago. So that's for now what is going to be discussed. I would encourage everybody watching who's interested to tune in at 9 a.m. April 23rd. We'll be streaming it Facebook Live. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yingling. For the Finance Committee, you just heard the budget presentation, and I don't have anything to add to that. On behalf of the Personnel Committee, Ms. Gilbert, do you have anything to share?
Just that Ms. McCullough and I will be working very shortly on the telework policy, and information regarding that will be forthcoming at a future council meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Public Safety, Mr. Kavachi.
The only thing I have, Mr. President, is, again, I know it sounds like a broken record, but it's a good broken record. The crime statistics still are consistently staying low. They've been low for years. Actually, we've seen crime consistently drop for probably 15 to 20 years now in the city, and that trend is continuing. It's on a steady, either even keel or decline, and recently it has been going down, and I'm going to keep it that way. And I'm proud of the job that the Westminster Police Department does to help facilitate that. But I'm also proud to live in a community that isn't riddled with it as well, because that's in big part due to the citizens that live here, and they're paying attention to what's going on around them. If they see something, they report it, and that's positive. And that's what we need to do to keep going in the direction that we are. And I'm glad to see it and glad to report it, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. For the Public Works Committee, Mr. Yingling.
No report this evening.
Thank you very much. Recreation and Parks, Mr. Dayhoff.
We have an advisory board meeting coming up, and we're looking forward to continuing. That committee has worked out, the advisory board has worked out extremely well, and we're looking forward to that meeting and continuing our work on things such as the pickleball. We relined the courts. We're going to be looking at Wingfield Valley Park and other recreation initiatives. And we're really happy with the good work that's being accomplished over at the Family Center, and applaud Ms. Gruber and the folks over there who are doing a great job for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dayhoff. No report for the Technology Committee, except to say that we'll be talking with Mr. Dodge some more about the autonomous vehicle program and the city's role that is anticipated being played in that, to make sure that we are in a position to do all the things that we need to do for that to make it work. That ends those reports, committee reports, council comments and discussion. This is the time during the meeting when council members are able to comment on anything else that is of interest to them that does not come under one of their committee reports. And so we'll begin with this end of the table with Mr. Kavachi.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and I won't steal it, I promise. But I do have one thing. I had an opportunity today to have a brief meeting with one of the two founders of the Infinite Love Project, which Mr. Yingling had mentioned earlier is going to be on the agenda for their Economic Development Committee meeting. And I just was so impressed. My wife, a long time ago, found out about it when it was kind of in its infancy, and sort of got us a little involved in terms of buying some of the signs and putting them up. I have one on my building, one at my home, and we bought some others for some folks. But spending a little time with him today, I was just very impressed with what they're doing and how that's moving along. They've got an incredible number of signs out. They've got some big plans that I think we can continue to be part of. And I'm so thrilled that as a city, we've kind of jumped on board with them. And that was not my doing. I think it was, I don't know which one of you actually kind of brought that in. That was you, Mr. Mayor, but somehow that has become, integral to the city of Westminster. And I couldn't be more proud after spending time with that gentleman today and getting to learn more about the project and what they're doing and the enthusiasm. He walked out of my office and it just felt good. And it's a really cool thing. And I hope we will continue to support them and grow with them over the years to come. So I was glad to see that they're on that agenda for your committee, Mr. Yingling. So that's it, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kavachi. And with that, we'll go to Mr. Yingling.
No comment tonight, Mr.
All right.
President.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Gilbert.
Yes, I have a few things. First, I wanted to thank Ms. Gruber. I met with her and her team in April with one of the planning meetings for the master plan regarding the Dobbin House. So that was exciting, and I was quite thankful I was part of a little piece of that day. Also wanted to draw attention to the opening of Mission Barbecue. They are finally open last week in April, or no, last weekend in March, sorry. Time just flies around here. Last week in March, they did their grand opening. So I welcome them to Westminster, and I'm glad to be a part of that. I believe, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, you spoke about the election. So I wanted to at least say a little bit about encouraging the city residents to meet with all the candidates and try to make an informed decision about who you're going to vote for and come out to vote. We always love to see large amounts of people hitting the polling places. And I also wanted to highlight today's nonprofit view in the Carroll County Times. There's an article written by Mr. Dodge. Take a moment to please read it. I'm looking forward to the development of our Silicon Main Street as well and the autonomous corridor. So that's all I have for today.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gilbert. And finally, Mr. Dayhoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also impressed with the Be Kind initiative, the Infinite Love initiative, and I think that's a lot of what Westminster is all about. I also want to give a shout out to Mission Barbecue. They opened on Vietnam Veterans Day. We are often a bit of a forgotten veteran at this point in time, and I really appreciated that they recognized us. I think they're really going to be a great community player. I want to mention that Chief Ledwell and the Deputy Chief Gibson, myself and Dr. Mona Becker got together with the Poor People's Campaign. They had an excellent presentation at the playground last Saturday. And we met a lot of folks and we enjoyed we enjoy talking to folks about the resources that we have in our community. And it was a good thing. I also really appreciate the fact that crime is continuing to drop in the city of Westminster. The Westminster Police Department, I believe, as an agency, is on the cutting edge of everything that's good about police reform. And we really appreciate all of the hard work that they've done. To every man and woman over at the department is just a joy to work with them. And I'm really proud of what it is that the police department's done. And I guess I have to give a shout out to the public safety chair, Councilman Kpis. I really appreciate his work and encouraging and being a good support structure for the police department. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dayhoff.
Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor.
I just wanted to say one thing quickly here, because Mr. Kpis, when he was talking about the Infinite Love Project and the Be Kind signs, I did not bring that here. That was actually Graham Dodge with Magic. He brought it in.
But you played a part in it.
I want to say, and I know I'm the one that wanted to discuss it with caution moving forward, because we're discussing kind of branding the city using something that's, in the private sector and we don't have control of. And I think that we need to proceed with caution, but I did want to say that I really do support it, and I'm proceeding optimistically with caution. So I will be discussing that in the economic development, committee meeting, but I just wanted to make sure credit went where it was due.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's now time for unfinished business. There is no unfinished business of which I'm aware, unless anybody else has any to bring up. Moving on, we'll turn to new business. We have one item of, I'm sorry, I skipped over ordinances and resolutions. I apologize. We have three ordinances and resolutions tonight, three items there. The first is introduction of ordinance number 933, an ordinance amending the code of the city of Westminster, chapter 36, procurement and contracts, to add section 36-7, sustainable procurement practices. And for that, we will call on our city administrator, Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. As you all undoubtedly recall, back in March, the Common Council adopted resolution number 21-01, supporting the City of Westminster's participation in the Sustainable Maryland Certification Program. This is a free and voluntary certification program for municipalities in Maryland that want to go green, save money, and take steps to sustain their quality of life over the long term. Sustainable Maryland is a collaborative effort between the Environmental Finance Center at the University of Maryland and the Maryland Municipal League. To become Sustainable Maryland certified, a municipality must complete and document actions worth a total of 150 points. And those points must include 2 mandatory actions and 2 of 6 priority actions. The municipality must then submit the appropriate documents as evidence that the program requirements have been satisfied. Included in your agenda packet is information on the various actions that the Westminster will be able to take to earn points. The adoption of a green purchasing policy would fulfill one of the required 2 priority actions. Ordinance number 933, which is before you tonight for introduction, would add a new section, Sustainable Procurement Practices, to Chapter 36 of the City Code. This new section, if adopted, would provide for adoption of a resolution that would set forth the goals and objectives of the city's sustainable contracting practices and direct staff to follow the same in the acquisition of goods and services to the maximum extent practical. The companion resolution will be brought forward for consideration in conjunction with the Common Council's adoption of ordinance number 933, which right now is slated for April 26, assuming you do introduce ordinance number 933 this evening. So with that, I will open it up for any questions that you all have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Matthews. Let's get this before us properly. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 933?
I'd like to make the motion to introduce the ordinance number 933.
Right. There's a motion by Ms. Gilbert to introduce. Is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
The second by Mr. Dayhoff. All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Matthews or any discussion? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor of the introduction of ordinance number 933, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it and the ayes have it. The ordinance is introduced and will be placed on the agenda at a future meeting for discussion and possible adoption. The next item is introduction of ordinance number 934, an ordinance amending chapter 164, zoning and subdivision of land of the Westminster City Code, Article 1, general provisions, Article 8B business zone, Article 10, IR restricted industrial zone, Article 11, IG general industrial zone, Article 12, PI planned industrial zone, and Article 20, special provisions to allow a new solar energy facility use as a permitted use or special exception use. And for that, we will call on our Director of Planning and Zoning, Mr. Depot.
Thank you and good evening. The Department of Community Planning Development was approached by Alder Energy Systems requesting to place solar panels on the rooftop of the existing Westminster self-storage structures. The proposed solar panel project is intended to be part of the Maryland's Community Solar Pilot Program. Currently, solar fields or solar panels are not a defined use and are not listed as an allowed use in the zoning ordinance. Westminster does allow solar panels as an accessory use if the power generated is provided only to the property on which the solar panels are located. Typically, these accessory solar panels you can find are installed on residential rooftops, producing energy for the home. If the solar panels are producing energy that exceeds the on-site need, as is the case with the Westminster self-storage site, these solar panels would be considered the principal use and therefore not allowed pursuant to the zoning ordinance. On March 10th, 2021, the Economic and Community Development Committee directed staff to bring forward a draft text amendment using the provided information in attachment 1 of the staff report as a general guide to the mayor and common council to allow rooftop solar panels as a permitted use or special exception use in the IR zoning district or other applicable zoning districts. The draft text amendment before you tonight that's being introduced is recommending to add a new definition of solar collector roof mounted, add a new definition of solar facility roof mounted, add a new solar facility roof mounted use as a special exception use in the B business zone, IR restricted industrial zone, IG general industrial zone, and PI planned industrial zone, subject to special provisions, and finally adding new solar facility special provisions. Staff recommends that the Common Council introduce proposed ordinance number 934 and refer it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for its review and recommendation to the Mayor and Common Council. That completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Depot.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 934?
Motion to introduce.
Oh, second.
Right, there's been a motion by Mr. Yingling and a second by Mr. Kavachi to introduce ordinance number 934. Are there any questions for Mr. Depot or any discussion on the introduction?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I
Kavachi?
know this is only introduction, so we don't have to get into too much of a lengthy discussion, but I just want to get clarity on one thing. I wasn't sure reading it. Mr. Depot, does this, are there any zones where it will be just an openly allowed use, or is it going to be a special exception in all the zones that it's going to be permitted by special exceptions? Is that, am I reading that correctly?
You are correct. The 4 zoning districts, we listed them as special exceptions as to introduce the ordinance. However, by the title of what we're presenting before the Mayor and Common Council tonight and before the Planning Commission, gives the Planning Commission to provide any recommendation they may see fit where a use could be a permitted use.
Mhm.
And then that would be brought back amended to the Mayor and Common Council. So it is open. It opens the door for that ability and discussion when we get to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Depot.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Are there any other questions for Mr. Depot? Or any discussion? So I just one question on Mr. Depot. So while the request came from one specific property owner, which is located obviously in one particular spot with a particular zoning, this would make this possible throughout a number of different zones within the city.
Yes, it would, primarily the industrial-based zoning districts.
Right, which is it would seem to be appropriate. Thank you. All right. Without any further discussion, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor of introduction of ordinance number 934, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. and the ordinance is introduced and will be referred to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
The final item is introduction of ordinance number 935, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of Westminster, Maryland, approving and adopting a budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. And we'll call on our Finance Director, Ms. Colston.
Good evening. As you know, we are thick into the process of the budget, and we have this ordinance that we're recommending council approve for the introduction of the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. We just sat through a wonderful presentation by the city administrator, Barb Matthews. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but I am available for any questions should you have them.
All right, thank you, Ms. Colston. All right, we've heard the city administrator's presentation. Ms. Colston's ready to answer any questions, as I'm sure is Ms. Matthews. Let's start with a motion. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 935?
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 935.
Thank you. There's been a motion by Ms. Gilbert. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And there's a second by Mr. Dayhoff. Is there any discussion or are there any questions? All right, hearing none, we will move on to a vote on introduction of ordinance number 935. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the ayes have it. And we will move this forward to our work session and continuing discussions beginning on April 19th.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dayhoff.
want to be sure that we get the slide presentation.
Right, and I did ask Ms. Matthews to
Yes, sir.
distribute that.
Yes, sir, you did. I just wanted to emphasize.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly. All right, next item is unfinished business. As I stated earlier, I'm aware of no unfinished business. Moving on from there to new business, we have one item, vote to go into a closed session. Mr. Kavachi, do you have a motion for us?
I do, Mr. President. Under statutory authority to close sessions under the Maryland Annotated Code General Provisions, Article 3-305B, we would like to close the session, go into a closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, to also consult counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, and to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. To also under 305B under category 1 personnel proposal. No, I'm good. That's it.
All right,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. There's been a motion by Mr. Kavachi and a second by Mr. Dayhoff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it, and the council will go into a closed session at the conclusion of the regular meeting. It's time now for departmental reports, and for that, we will turn to Ms. Matthews, the city administrator, to lead us through that. Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. Just wanted to mention that our new Housing Services Director, Eric Brown, will be joining the city staff tomorrow, and I'm sure you join me in being excited about his coming on board. I also wanted to mention fairly recently, you all approved an ordinance authorizing execution of a purchase contract for the sale of the Winters lot. This is the parking lot that is in front of our former lease space at 56 West. I got an email late Friday evening from one of the owner representatives indicating that something came up during the title search and they would like an extension of the 45-day due diligence period, which certainly I don't see any reason why the city wouldn't be supportive of that. Ms. Levan has opined that all that is necessary is the execution of a letter agreement by the parties extending that due diligence period, but I did feel it would be appropriate to share that with the Mayor and Common Council this evening, that action will likely take place. With that, I would like to turn to Councilmember Dayhoff to see if he has a report he would like to share on behalf of the Westminster Volunteer Fire Department.
No report this evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson, our Director of Technology.
Nothing new to report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Colston.
I have nothing further to report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Depot.
Good evening again. On April 6th, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved a special exception for 150 grappling. This is a private indoor recreation use at 7 Tuck Road. The BZA also heard an administrative appeal case appealing a zoning determination regarding the use of an existing freestanding sign located off the property of the business wanting to use the sign. Just briefly, in the B business zone, on-premise signs are permitted as an accessory use. Standard practice has been that when the zoning ordinance references on-premise, it would mean on the property, off-premise would mean off the property. However, the ordinance, as seems to be the case, does that in other circumstances not define the term premise. Therefore, the zoning administrator, through a determination, defined on-premise as meaning on the property and subsequently denied the request for the use of the off-property freestanding sign by the business. This determination was appealed, and the BZA ruled in favor of the appellant and found that the zoning administrator was incorrect in the definition of on-premise, thereby allowing the use of the existing freestanding sign. I only bring this up because ultimately it may change how signage, including billboards, is allowed within the city of Westminster, as well as affect other circumstances on and off the premise when on and off premise is used in the zoning ordinance. On April 8th, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved an amended plat for Meadow Branch Industrial Park located off of Buckshot Road. They approved Clark Farm site development plan for the 35 multifamily dwelling units off of Mulligan Lane, and also approved Len Stoller site development plan for an automobile sales and service use along Maryland 140. There was no Historic District Commission meeting this month, and that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Mr. President.
Mr. Dayhoff.
Mr. Depot, you and I have discussed in the past, and I believe that other council members have discussed with you, we need to take a good look at some of our zoning ordinance. We really need to clean up some of our zoning statutes. And I believe that we have taken a good look at doing that in the coming year.
And, you know, we've got a consultant that we're bringing on board, Mr.
Good.
Dayhoff. and
Okay.
That's, I think, Mr. Depot can speak to it, but I think that's the intention.
Yeah, I really wanted to emphasize that. It's time for us to take a good look at it and clean it up a little bit.
Well,
Thank you for all your work, Mr. Depot. I understand that it's a lot of tough work at times, and we really appreciate your work.
thank you. In this case, I bring it up again, maybe this is a time that we do look at this term on premises now, and maybe through a text amendment. It's used in multiple ways on premise. It can be very confusing, the ordinance, and this is something that could be a minor text amendment to clean up the ordinance. And you know, prior to moving into the larger sections, we want to look at changing.
A text amendment is something that I had in mind also, so it's good that we're maybe thinking along the same lines with that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Dayhoff.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor.
I don't think we need to revisit the definition of premise. I think the situation that came up was in front of the BZA because it's a situation where it needed an exception, not necessarily something that we need to change the code over this particular situation. Just so everyone's familiar, the property we're talking about is where the New Mission Barbecue went in. And they had a sign that was just over a shared property line for that whole property is actually split up. It's not just one property when you look at it legally. It was just over the line. And for decades, that sign was used by whoever was in that building. So for decades, basically, we had Friendlies and you had Hardee's, which I believe went in the 70s. And while the city didn't have any record of us approving a sign or having to do with the sign there was record of the county approving a permit for electrical back in the 70s for Hardee's. So we knew the sign was back. I mean, we're talking 50 years now. So for a business to move into town and have every expectation to use the sign that whatever businesses were there have been using for, 50 years, and then be told they can't, I understand the position of our planning department, and that's exactly why I think the BZA exists. I think it was really, I think, it went exactly how it should have gone. I think it, again, the expectation was set for over 5 decades. And I think that sign should be used. And the alternatives to that were to, tear down 2 signs and switch them, or they're just, none of them were practical. So, but I guess my main point is, I don't think the issue itself was, we were, misusing the word premise. And I don't think that needs to be part of any major movement moving forward, but that's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. I guess Ms. Matthews, we'll go back to you to move on.
Thank you. Our Deputy Public Works Director, Mr. Dick, is sitting in for Mr. Glass this evening.
Thank you. Real quickly, our annual paving project, which is out in Whispering Meadows right now, will be finished up in the next week or 2. By the middle of next week is what I'm predicting, since it wants to rain every day now. As well as our annual ADA ramp and curb for this year is finishing up probably by the end of this week. Phase 3 I&I is going to be starting up on Wednesday. They're going to be moving and mobilizing, and I think they're looking to start actually doing the work next Monday after they get set up. Precast walls out at the wastewater treatment plant for the sludge drying building are starting to go up. So anybody going down 31 should start to notice a building there instead of framework. So that's a good thing. Rather than that, that's all I got on my list right now.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Ms. Gruber.
Good evening. Just a few updates since your last meeting. On March 25th, the team from Grove and Dololio Architects sent 6 members out to spend about 8 hours on site, finishing their final evaluation of the Durbin House. And we anticipate seeing a draft report from that firm sometime in May. So I certainly will bring additional details back to you once we see some concrete information coming back from Grove and Dololio. On March 27th, the city's recreation department hosted a bunny trail in lieu of our traditional egg hunt. And we had a tremendous spread of photographs online through Carroll County Times. And we made over 200 families very happy on that particular day. Lots of smiling children, and of course the weather cooperated, so that's always a good thing. On March 30th, Ruling Associates finally finished their geotechnical borings at the pool. This is the final piece of the bid documents that we're waiting on. We still haven't received their report, but we do anticipate receiving that shortly, at which time then we will be able to pull together the bid package and submit it for review and hopefully posting to email and marketplace. And also, after the Recreation and Park Advisory Board's favorable recommendation to have additional tennis courts lined as pickleball courts and your endorsement of that, the work was completed expediently by our streets department. And we now have active pickleball play occurring on city park courts Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 12, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 12, Sundays from 5:30 to 8:30, and Thursdays from 6 to 9, with a recent request to add another group on Tuesdays from 6 to 9. So certainly those efforts are being utilized, and I would like to extend thanks from the pickleball players to you for your endorsement of that recommendation, as they are enjoying the outdoor space. This concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Mr. President?
Mr. Mayor.
I would just like to say I like the pickleball initiative. I never even heard of pickleball until probably 1.5 years ago when Councilman Yingling started talking about it, and I just thought it was some silly thing you saw on the internet. But more and more over the last year and a half, I've heard more people talk about it and get excited about it, and I've gotten some feedback from the community, and they like that we're doing more with it. I think it's fastly becoming the unofficial official sport of Westminster. And I'm looking forward to hear from Councilman Kavachi's patrol of the courts. Thank you, Mr.
Are you
President.
trying to insinuate that I'm of a certain age?
No, I just know that you live right there, and we
Oh.
discussed in previous meetings that you would patrol the courts and keep an eye on sound levels and whatnot.
Yeah.
With that, Chief Ledwell?
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank you for your proclamation. Our dispatchers, as well as all the communication specialists, do play a crucial part in the safety of our community, as well as the operation of our police department. So thank you for that. We recently sent out an invitation on the city newsletter and through our social media outlets to recruit community residents to help us with our formal community engagement, police community engagement strategies. We did have a pretty good response, and we've started to schedule our first meeting in that regard. We are currently working with staff here to look at all the legislation that was passed very recently regarding police operations and how that'll affect our policies, our training, and our reporting. We think we're in pretty good shape moving forward, but we'll be looking at that and the mandated deadlines to complete those things. We're in the process along that line of collaborating with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office to combine our in-service trainings programs to ensure that we have standardization and to use synergy in that regard. We have one police recruit who is doing very well in the police academy with a scheduled early August graduation date. We have 3 of our newer lateral officers have all successfully completed their field training requirements and are self-sufficient out on the street right now. And we have one remaining vacancy where we're doing an entry-level testing process, and we have a written test scheduled for Saturday, May the 8th for that. With the recent retirement of a sergeant, we are currently running a sergeant's promotional process, and we have a number of excellent candidates who are competing for that promotion position. And that's all that I have for my report tonight.
Mr. President, if I might.
Mr. Kavachi.
So Chief, you're saying that with the retirement of the one sergeant, we've got a number of folks from within the department that are applying for that position. Is that what I heard?
Correct. Yes, we're running a promotional process within the police department.
And the response has been good.
Yes.
That's excellent news. That speaks volumes. Great work.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, Ms. McCullough, our HR Director.
Is Ms. McCullough still with us?
I was just checking.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Good evening. There's nothing to report for the Human Resources Department this evening.
Thank you. President Pecoraro, that concludes staff's reports. We'd be certainly happy to answer any questions that the Mayor and Common Council have.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Matthews. And before we move away from the departmental reports, I just want to say thank you to everybody who helped make this first in-person meeting of the Mayor and Council in over a year possible, particularly Mr. Davidson and his team who were on site over the last few days, getting everything set up, as well as our friends at the Community Media Center who also paid us a visit and helped make some arrangements. We very much appreciate their continuing support as well as their broadcasting these meetings. And finally, last but not least, Ms. Vysotsky, our city clerk, who also was instrumental in making this possible and has braved the pandemic to come out and be with us tonight. So thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to be with you all here this evening, I must say.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is citizen comments. And this is when we invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to tonight's agenda or any other city issues. During these virtual meetings, we will invite comments to be sent to our city clerk at comments@westgov.com. Commenters should include their address and phone number with their comments. And at this time in the meeting, I will read out the comments that we have received. And that concludes the regular meeting. the agenda rather, and the regular portion of our meeting. And with that, without objection, we are adjourned. And I hope everyone continues to stay safe and healthy. Thanks very much.